This week on Risers and Fallers, we'll be covering a pair of breakouts from the state of Texas, as well as probably the most surprising faller you'll see on this show all season long, right here on Player Profiler. All right, I have got my main man, the fantasy savant, Evan Ringler, in the house. How have we reached 4 weeks, Evan? We've had some ups and downs, some terrible breaking news today. Trey Benson put on IR, Bucky Irving in a walking boot. Metaphors for my fantasy football season. How about yours?
Yeah, pretty much the same. It's been really rough. It is interesting that we're finally getting some running back injuries to go with our wide receiver injuries. So at least we're keeping it balanced, I guess.
We are. We lose a little bit of Lamar Jackson, which we can talk about, a little tease for a little bit later as some players get mentioned on our risers and fallers count. But let's just get right into it right here. You know, this guy's the talk of the town right now, and for really good reason. Our first riser for today is going to be Woody Marks, running back, Houston Texans. Player Profiler seasonal ranking has him up to RB21, which makes him a nice little RB2 with room to grow. Ranked as RB23 on the week against the lowly Ravens, but it looked to outperform that. And as you can see, our signature stat in the bottom there, the RB2 in fantasy points per opportunity amongst qualified running backs. Evan, what do you think about this bad boy after the breakout game against the division rival Titans?
Well, I think he's going to be definitely a riser. He's going to be an RB2 throughout the rest of the season, but there isn't like an elite ceiling here. We should temper our expectations because the offensive line is completely horrible. But he's going to have the passing work, and it seems like he's going to have the majority of the rushing work as well. So, guy that you can certainly throw in your lineup every single week, but just don't expect a huge ceiling.
Don't expect a huge ceiling from him. We had a snap count increase from 11% to 27% to 48%. However, Nick Chubb was still pretty involved with 15 rushing attempts. I do think it will end up being the passing work that keeps him as kind of, the main guy in this backfield. It is a conservative team with head coach DeMeco Ryans, so there is going to be veteran plays. The good news for Marks, I think, on top of everything, was he had multiple decleatings as a pass blocker in this game against the Titans. And I think that's going to keep him on the field more than some of these other rookies, which I don't even want to talk about some of these other guys that have let me down here. I just feel strong about he's going to be given the opportunity. Now, you're right, that ceiling is capped a little bit with this Texans line, with the offense in general, but you do have to like that somebody is starting to emerge from this class.
Absolutely. Just a guy that came out of nowhere, but you can plug him in your lineup every week. Not the next Bucky Irving, but at least we got somebody kind of in that mold.
And it does feel good. Not the next Bucky Irving, and we do want to shout out Bucky Irving to a quick RIP while we get the chance here. And as we transition on to our next player, I will ask you, Irving is going to be out for a little bit on Rachaad White and Sean Tucker.
I'm expecting Rachaad White to handle the majority of the work while Bucky is out. He's proven himself to be able to handle a workload, and he might not be super explosive, but he has been a pretty good rusher and a very good receiver throughout his career. Tucker is a very explosive change of pace back, probably won't be used much at all in the passing game. So the guy that I want there is Rachaad White, and I'm only expecting Bucky to be out maybe 3-4 weeks max.
Sure. Yeah, the reports came out today that they were taking it week to week, but it does seem like we kind of don't really know what week to week means anymore in the NFL. I think they say that just to kind of appease what's going on.
Yeah, week to week in like that sounds like he might play a week from now, but he's in a walking boot and on crutches.
CeeDee Lamb is week to week, and I think they projected him to be 4 weeks out from his injury. So you never really know what's going on with these guys here, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Speaking of CeeDee Lamb, let's transition us to our other guy who, man, talk about a riser's riser. Drafters have to be happy with Cowboys wide receiver George Pickens up to wide receiver 15 on our Player Profiler seasonal rankings, with Lamb's return looming, of course, at some point. But wide receiver 3 on the week, which I love. He's taking on the Jets and Sauce Gardner, but all that doesn't quite mean what it's used to. And Evan, this is your guy this week, so I'll let you take it from here. How we feeling?
Yeah, Pickens was my guy all off season too, so it's nice to have one of these guys that I ranked like rounds above consensus actually pay off in a big way. I wasn't projecting CeeDee Lamb to get hurt. That is unfortunate, but we're getting there nonetheless. And it starts with the situation. The Cowboys are the fantasy ideal, basically, at this point. First in pass plays per game, second in air yards. The offense has been very efficient, fourth in EPA per play, second in success rate. And Dak's been a very good quarterback. He's returned to being top 5 in most of the accuracy metrics. And we know this is the worst defense in the NFL. And then adding on top of that, you see that signature stat on your screen right there, 42% zone target share, fourth among all receivers. All of the volume stats are there with him as well, 9 targets in 3 straight games. And I could keep going, but everything's aligning for George Pickens to be a wide receiver 1 as long as CeeDee Lamb is out, and still a high end to mid wide receiver 2 when Lamb returns.
It does. It does kind of feel like when Lamb does come back, we're going to get this year's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That's really the, I don't know how apples to apples that is, but just conceptually, that feels like that's what they're capable of, especially with that 30. I mean, that Cowboys secondary is ranked 32nd in almost every single relevant metric, especially as it correlates to the Dallas passing offense, which is number 1 in pass plays per game. And that's all I want to keep seeing. He's doing it with an ADOT of 11.8, which is only 33rd. And that's optimistic, I think, because they're using him in more ways than just the shot play guy.
Right.
He's a willing blocker. He leads all wide receivers in routes run by almost 10. And second in that, you care to guess who that might be? It's a really funny one.
Man.
He's a disappointing second round draft pick.
Second round NFL or fantasy?
Fantasy.
London?
It's very close.
T. Higgins?
Ladd McConkey has the
geez.
second most routes run. And we all know where he's down. Yeah, we know where he's at. So he could be on the show soon for the wrong reasons. But yes, let's let the good times keep rolling. I feel encouraging when Lamb comes back just because of the connection with Dak right off of the rip. And I just love the way that this is trending. This is everything you want in August, albeit for unconventional circumstances.
Yeah. You mentioned that the low ADOT or the lower ADOT might actually be a good thing. Something that goes along with that is first read targets. He's currently 4th among all receivers in first read targets. So he's going to be a consistent part of this offense, I believe, even when CeeDee Lamb returns.
Could not agree more. Congratulations to all the George Pickens believers who always thought this is what he was capable of in these years in Pittsburgh that have gone to waste. Would have loved to see what he looked like with Aaron Rodgers, with how DK Metcalf is playing. That kind of might have been a fun one, but I much more appreciate the operation with Dak here. So we will throw to a quick break here, but when we come back, we've got that massive faller that I teased at the beginning of the show, and then another guy that I think deserves a little dirt on as well. So we'll be right back.
So let's put our hoodie on and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our Lineup Genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our Lineup Genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So go fight fire with a Player Profiler DFS Dominator.
Go fight fire with fire, which is what we're going to try and do right now. So let's get to our first faller of the day. And Evan, you brought this one to the table, and I could not agree more. It's going to be Derrick Henry, the absolute first ballot Hall of Famer. Player Profiler seasonal rankings has his down to RB14. He's the RB15 on the week with a tough matchup against the Houston Texans, although he has historically feasted on them. Evan, if you had told me before the season that Derrick Henry was going to fall below expectations, I would have guessed injury. I would have guessed a decline in efficiency, injuries to the Ravens offensive line, maybe even an early season Lamar injury, which we did get, but not until this week. I would not have guessed that it was because he was going to get game scripted out of a lot of these matchups. What's going on with the King?
Yeah. I mean, you're making my argument for me right there. And before I get underway, I'm talking up George Pickens this week, and I am shitting on Derrick Henry. So what could go wrong? Am I right?
That's odd. Hey, that's fidelity for the viewers, man. You're laying your cards out on the table. They're very clear. You can't muddy them up anyway.
Yeah, there's just no way that this goes wrong for me. So Derrick Henry's points per game, keeping it simple, this year has fallen from 19.8 in 2024 to 12.5 through the first 4 games. As you mentioned, his efficiency hasn't really been the problem. He's still averaging 5.8 yards per carry, super high touchdown rate, super high breakaway run rate. And because of that, I'm sure that there will be some big games down the stretch when Lamar returns. But the real concern is the volume. Derrick Henry currently ranks 31st in weighted opportunities and 30th in expected points per game among running backs. This is primarily a result of the Ravens being worse in general and especially on defense. Their defense currently is allowing 33 points per game, the most in the NFL, more than even Dallas, while ranking 29th in EPA per play, 27th in success rate. Last year, they were miles better in all of those stats. And this has had a big impact on their offense, as opposed to last year where they were running the ball 49% of the time. This year, that's down to 37% of the time because of them being behind in games and having to keep pace because of this bad defense. And that is what is leading to the reduced volume for Derrick Henry. And now going forward, Lamar Jackson is set to miss 2, maybe 3 games with a hamstring injury. This offense is, I think, going to be bad with Cooper Rush under center. So I think that Derrick Henry is borderline benchable until Lamar returns. I'm going to be updating the rankings later today. If you have really good options at running back, you could consider benching him. And when Lamar returns, just expect Henry to be more of the RB2 than the RB1 that we drafted him to be.
Sure. Yeah, if you have a Michael Carter or an Ollie Gordon, you definitely want to consider. No, man. I don't know about that. No, I know. I'm kidding. That is brutal. You mentioned, they were already getting outscored by, with Lamar in the game. Now they're going up against the Texans, who might have turned a corner, the Rams the week after that, the Bears, who were on fire, the Dolphins, who might have figured something out, although they did lose Tyreek, the Vikings, who knows, and then the Browns. So maybe there's going to be a tough month here for the King, is what I guess what I'm getting at. And, I don't know what your records are out there if you drafted Derrick Henry in the first or maybe the early second rounds, but you got to be a little concerned here. I'll flip a little optimism my way. I wouldn't worry too much about the Justice Hill show. I think his games he can be very fluky as a player. He's obviously explosive, but half of his points came on what I thought was a fluky 71-yard breakaway touchdown run. It's only his second rushing touchdown in the last 2 seasons. So I don't think you're going to be seeing a ton of that. The fumbling, I think he'll get under control. Prior to this season, he only had 3 fumbles in his last 600 attempts. I don't think that these guys figure it out. I will ask you now on my third point. There's 2 ways you can take the Lamar injury. Either they'll lean very heavily on Derrick Henry, more so than they have been, regardless of game script, or those high-value touches will drop at the end of the day, and their bottom 5 defense will determine how much he even plays. Which of those camps do you think you fall into?
So somewhere in the middle. I think that the Ravens' neutral pass rate will probably go down a bit as Lamar is probably, playing at 90% instead of 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, they might run the ball a little bit more in neutral situations, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to throw to keep up because that defense is a disaster right now. And they just keep losing starters every week as well. Some of them for the season. So, I'm, like you mentioned, not worried about Justice Hill, not worried about the fumbles, not worried about Derrick Henry as a player. It's just about the situation and especially that defense. And, honestly, Lamar has been pretty disappointing this year too, from a real football perspective.
Yeah, he's definitely been drifting out of the pocket a little bit more, a little bit too much improvising and scrambling, which, I mean, obviously he's great at, but, a lot of his success last year came because he was able to make quick decisions as soon as the ball was snapped. And, the Ravens defense last year, they were pretty bad to start the season, and then they did figure it out. Well, this year, they don't really have the tools in the toolbox to do that like they did in 2024. So definitely tough times ahead. So thoughts and prayers to our king here. Let's get to our last guy here, which it feels very strange to be going from, this monster we're just talking about to this guy who's a little bit more of an afterthought now. Keon Coleman is my pick for a faller this week, down to wide receiver 37 on our seasonal rankings. He's wide receiver 40 on this week, going on up against the Patriots, who have been getting burnt. But wide receiver 40, when the bye weeks are kicking in, is not exactly what you want to love. And the signature stat there in the bottom of the corner, you'll see he had 11 targets in his first game, and he only has 11 targets in his last 3. Pretty ridiculous bottoming out for managers who thought they might have had a steal in their fantasy drafts after that 21-point, wide receiver 4 opening game against the Ravens. But of course, the Ravens are showing that anybody can do that against them. So not quite the performance we thought it was. And Buffalo, the big thing here is that they've really just morphed into the best rushing team in the league. Cook is having an all-pro season. The offensive line continues to be a top 2-3 unit at worst. So I guess I'll flip it back to you here. What is the hope for Keon Coleman, if there even is any?
I guess the hope for Keon Coleman would be that you plug him into your flex spot in a juicy matchup, and he gives you 4 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's really the only situation that you could start him, is in just a dream matchup. And that's the same thing with really all of the receivers on Buffalo. Sure. I love Khalil Shakir, but the volume is just not there. Even Dalton Kincaid, he's been very good in fantasy for us this year, but the underlying usage metrics, he's outperforming those by a lot. Because he's a tight end, you can play him, obviously, but none of these guys are getting the usage they need to actually be significant fantasy assets.
Yeah, could not agree more. You're really, not that you're ever hoping for this, but it will take an injury for one of these guys to get any boost in production at all. And the way that they're playing right now, that seems as unlikely as wishing for something else to happen. You've got a matchup against the Patriots this weekend, Falcons after that, and then a bye. And then you got the Panthers, the Chiefs, and the Dolphins. So there is some hope for him to be a plug and play as the bye weeks start to roll in, as, Josh Allen continues to just, he's the MVP favorite right now after Herbert's, fumbling against the Giants. So not quite sure what your optimism levels would be if you're a casual fantasy player and you need something out of Keon Coleman. He's just a stash at this point, and hope that, a lot of these guys get streaky. He was streaky last year. He's streaky this year. My big concern is that he's not a great separator. He's not playing in the slot at all, and he doesn't get red zone looks. So not a whole lot else we can say on the pro Keon Coleman corner.
Yep. I don't got much for you. I mean, I guess the red zone thing, there's a chance that maybe that regresses positively, and he becomes more of a red zone threat. But even if he does, he's touchdown or bust. So
yeah, and that bust is unfortunately the story for his season as of right now. So let's ride that momentum. We've got our risers, we've got our fallers. Let's talk a little Thursday night football. Now, if you're watching this podcast, it is Thursday. We have got a nice matchup, I think, despite some of the injury bug bites. Last week was fun. We nailed last week. We nailed the Seahawks. We nailed the cover. So I think we're looking at 2 for 2 right now in some way, shape, or form. Let's try and make it 3 for 3. As you can see there, the spread is LA by 7. The over-under is 46.5. Now, that did move this week because of the potential injuries to Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and of course that 49ers offense is still missing the big dogs in Kittle and Ayuk. So how are you feeling about this matchup?
Yeah, it's just so hard to know what's going to happen here with Purdy, Jennings, and Pearsall. None of them have practiced so far this week. It seems like none of them are likely to play, but we don't really know because it's Kyle Shanahan. So in terms of fantasy, it's pretty obvious. You start CMC, Puka, Adams, Kyron, and I guess you could flex Jennings or Pearsall if they play. I do like the matchup for Stafford this week, so I'd be okay streaming him. And that's kind of all there is to talk about on the fantasy side of things, at least.
Yeah, there's really, these offenses, when they're humming, they're almost always auto plays, and these defenses have been, they're high floor, low ceiling defenses. Some notes for this game. Of course, both teams are 3-1. despite the injuries to the 49ers last year, they were able to keep both matchups with the Rams within 6 points of fewer. They've also won 5 of their last 6 matchups in LA. So this rivalry does have some juice to it. This year on Thursday Night Football in particular, home teams are 2-1 with all 3 favorites winning and 2 of those covering. The only ones that didn't cover were the Bills, who won. I believe they won by 10 and the spread was 11.5, if I'm not mistaken. CMC has feasted on LA. He's averaging 105 rushing yards per game, 5 touchdowns since joining the 49ers. And you mentioned Matthew Stafford, and you mentioned him as being a good potential streamer here. This is somebody who's playing at the top of his game. He's second in the NFL in passing, just behind Dak, 8th in EPA per pass. He's absolutely crushing it. Here's my favorite stat, though. Number 1 in danger throws, but only has 2 interceptions through 4 games. So he is taking high risks, and he is getting highly rewarded.
Yeah. Yep. And that might regress. Maybe he'll start throwing some more picks. But I'm not really scared of this 49ers defense without Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
I mean, Fred Warner is still that guy, but that's kind of it. So I'm going to go ahead and say under 46.5. That -7 spread, that's a weird one to bet. I guess I would lean Niners, but again, we don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know who's playing receiver. I just don't think the 49ers are going to be able to score enough to push the game over that 46.5 number.
Yeah, and you could tell last week Brock Purdy was not playing like his usual self. Coming back from injury, of course, injuries to his passing game. Just also first matchup back. Jaguars aggressive, fun defense to watch right now. And Stafford, I mentioned those numbers. He's put those up against the Texans, the Eagles, and the Colts. 3 very good defenses. So my gut is telling me big Jared Verse game, which I know is completely random, but let's get a little defense mentioned in there. Kyron and Corum are running the ball with ease. I'm taking the over here, and I'm taking LA to actually cover. So that way, hopefully we can keep the streak alive. At least one of us picking something correct here on the show for 3 straight weeks. So that will do it for risers and fallers this week. If you guys have been enjoying the show, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe. We've been enjoying, doing this together with you all for this season. So I'll let Evan take the floor here. Evan, you got anything you're working on or anything anywhere that people can find you?
At Evan Ringler FF on X, and then playerprofiler.com. That's all I got.
Excellent. And I am Chuck F. Bass on X as well. I'll see you guys Sunday morning for the Start Shit show. So good luck this week. Cheers.